The Forward Together Project is a Langston University initiative supported by generous grant contributions from Inasmuch and the Kirkpatrick Foundations. The project is a series of interviews, vignettes, and feature stories highlighting people, organizations, and events that positively impact marginalized communities. Join us as we explore the stories of those who are working timelessly to create a more inclusive and equitable society. Tune in to watch their inspiring stories and learn how you can be part of the movement to move forward together.
Greenwood Rising History Center is pivotal when it comes to making a connection or a bridge from what happened 100 years ago, not just focusing on the horrific moments of the massacre, but more so connecting individuals, whether you're young, old, whether you're black or white, to the rich history that has never really been told on a world-class level of the lives, the free and independent lives that black people were once able to live like nowhere else in the United States, right here in Oklahoma. Back then it was the Oklahoma Territory, Indian Territory. Black people could live free. They could, and what does that mean? A black man could own his own land. A black man could raise his family. Families and communities of black citizens could live within their own communities, their own spaces, and be free from persecution, from what we refer to as the post-realities of the racial realities of post-Civil War era. Quite literally, the vernacular that would be used would be, if you are black and you can get to Oklahoma, you got to get there, because we can live our lives truly as free citizens. That was the mindset. That's what was going on 1866, the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. This is 30, 40, 50, 60 years before the term Black Wall Street even starts. So the territory, the entire area, the entire community of what we refer to as Oklahoma was a place where black people could live and live free in Indian country. And we're just now getting to that. So it talks about access to wealth, access to the power systems. You were in control. You could be in control. So the bridge is, this is not a new phenomenon. This was once the norm, and connecting present day and future generations that we're not trying to achieve something that has never been. This is the basis. This is the beginning of Oklahoma. And reminding people of that history allows there this connection point, so that when you talk about reparative work of looking at criminal justice reform of today, looking at what reparations look like, repairing past damages, health inequities when it comes to how African Americans in this community and others don't have the same equal access to health care as their counterparts in that area, in that community. Wealth disparities, generational wealth gaps. It gives a connector that we're not trying to achieve something that's never been. We're trying to get back to what the things that were here and were in mainstream of Oklahoma. It's just that no one's been educated to this on a wide level scale. So as a nonprofit institution, working with foundations, working with organizations like Inasmuch, to say, help us tell this story, help us tell this narrative, provide the resources and provide the capability so that we can tell this story well beyond the borders of Greenwood, well beyond the borders of Tulsa. Help us make this a worldwide story so that it's no longer something new, it's something that is revered and is a model that people can refer to. Greenwood Rising has impacted Tulsa specifically in the realm of nonprofits and board engagement activity because of just the nature of how many different people were invited to sit at the table to have this discussion. You must have wide engagement, and you must be able to have the mindset and the maturity to sit across with somebody that maybe you don't have too much in common with on the surface. Maybe you don't vote the same way. Maybe you don't attend the same churches. Maybe you are on the other side of the railroad tracks. But how do you get people to say there is a common element, and that's the human element, that this affects and impacts us all? During the work of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission, the focus was reaching across the aisle, reaching across the lines. You had Republicans and Democrats. You had white and black. You had rich and poor. You had highly educated to non-high educated. But we were sitting down saying, you know what? There's a lot that we probably are not going to agree with when it comes to policy, when it comes to economic things. But can we just start with the basic element, and that is a horrific moral injustice was done 100 years ago. None of us were around, none of us were born, but we are all stewards of what was passed down to us. And so it puts us all in the same pool of how can we work together to take what happened back then, look at it, and move forward together. So when you have a Greenwood Rising History Center, when you have a Greenwood Cultural Center right down the street, when you have a John Hope Franklin Center, all keepers of the history, you have a place where nonprofit organizations can send their teams, can send their people, can encourage corporations, can encourage institutions to visit this area, to come to this area, to be invested in this area and its future, because Tulsa's future and where Wayne Gretzky said, "Be where the puck is going." Where the puck is going is everything that's centered around this history, because it ties us all together. And so nonprofits being involved in this can be on the forefront of where do we put resource dollars that can help this initiative and these initiatives like it that Greenwood Rising is doing and these other institutions to help move our community forward. Actually, Bloomberg Philanthropies and that arm, I mean, Bloomberg is a huge conglomerate, but their philanthropic arm, we wouldn't have the resources that elevated this to a worldwide level without their direct engagement. For example, having Michael Bloomberg fly to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he himself, he could have passed it off to somebody, one of his assistants or someone else in the company, a vice president, but to have the founder, Michael Bloomberg, fly to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in 2019, I believe, stand in Tulsa and award $1 million to the Greenwood Arts Project to say we want to help fund art projects that can come from across this country, around this community, from many different citizens, white, black, what have you, to create art that people will visually take in this history. That was very powerful. Someone of his stature and making that announcement. It was a worldwide thing that went all over the world. Why is Bloomberg going to Tulsa, Oklahoma and giving $1 million? It's the impact that a foundation can have that has that type of platform. Not only with that, but then his initiatives afterwards, continually bringing attention to what was once here, the economic wealth of black citizens that were in Tulsa and around Oklahoma at one time, and even he, because of his wealth and stature, acknowledging that we wouldn't have some of the things that we have institutions today if it wasn't for what was started back in Greenwood over 100 years ago. Bloomberg stepping in to say, we want to be on the right side of history and use our resources to make an impact. Definitely changed the trajectory of what we were doing. It helps further our objectives in the fact, as I've kind of already stated, having organizations, having nonprofits, having institutions that have resources and connection, helping you to tell your story. It's like someone standing on a street corner of a busy intersection and they're cupping their hands together to try to get people's attention. how their impact comes into play is giving that same person a microphone and a huge speaker system set up behind them that you'd hear at an arena where you know, whoever the greatest musician artists would be playing, and give them that type of amplification to what they're saying. They're saying the same thing, they're doing the same thing, but they have this way of amplifying what they're doing that gets everybody's attention, that causes people, no matter how far they're away in, you know, in a certain part of that area, to stop and hear what they're saying. And it's so loud and it's so in your face, you can't help but drive by and see what's going on. It brings attention. That's the best description I can give to what foundations can do with our work and what Greenwood Rising and this Greenwood history. You are amplifying what we're doing in ways that we could not do on our own. So being ranked number 7 as the USA Today put that out in February of 2022 to say, I mean, think about what it's saying. The top 10 places that USA Today, a worldwide publication, is saying, top 10 places that you should visit in North America, and an institution that wasn't even a year old. At that point, hadn't even been open but maybe 6 months. And within 6 months of opening, a worldwide publication is saying, this is one of the top 10 places. Whether you're black, white, young, old, I don't care who you are, you need to go see this place. That cannot be overstated. It really allowed people that would maybe never even consider coming to Tulsa, coming to Greenwood, or even thinking about this history, open up their paper, and they could be sitting somewhere in Florida or Miami or Orlando, or when it comes to USA Today, that paper goes all over the world. A person open that up and sees Greenwood Rising, what is that? Top 10 places to go. And when they see this is an institution for people to learn the history of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, but black history overall in Oklahoma, you cannot put a value on what that simple publication did for the status of what we've done. And what makes Greenwood Rising History Center, I would say, not necessarily different, but where we're nuanced. No one else has this story. There is no other place in the United States, in the world, that can say the largest collection or the largest, and I'll say conglomerate, of wealthy African Americans who owned their land and became literally millionaires overnight. There's no other place in the world that can say that they had the best way it could be described is Black Wall Street. It was a term that was utilized by Booker T. Washington. The history is he visited here. The fame of what was happening here, where black people could move here and live amazing lives, was actually spreading all over the country in the 1880s, 1890s, 1900s. Booker T. Washington heard about Oklahoma. You got to see Oklahoma. It's amazing. The summer of 1905, the first person to even make a statement about this being Black Wall Street was Booker T. Washington. He came here, he spent a few weeks here during the summer of '05. He was visiting, and they were taking him from town to town. Boley, Oklahoma, and Langston, Oklahoma, and Tallahassee, and Okmulgee, and Muskogee, and the list goes on and on. And it is rumored that one day, after seeing town after town, black people own businesses, black people own the land, black people, the farming, the businesses, the people, the business they called them back then, the haberdasheries is the old term. He stops one day and says, this Oklahoma is like living in Negro Wall Street. It was the best description that he, of course, there was no stock exchange here, there was no business firms and trading stocks. But it was the best description he could think of. I've never seen a place like this, and it's an entire territory. Note, Greenwood and Black Wall Street wasn't even established then. That wasn't established until 1906. So what was he calling Negro Wall Street? All of these black towns, all of these communities of Oklahoma. And he said, man, it's like Negro Wall Street. That's where that came from. That's what makes this story, this history center, different than any other in this realm, whether it's the African American Museum of Culture and Smithsonian in DC, or the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, or the Underground Railroad Museum in Cincinnati, Ohio, or the Lorraine Motel Museum that's in Memphis. No one has this story, and that's what makes this so unique. So the 100th anniversary festivities that took place, it's about 7 to 10 days of events and planning. You have to understand, this work began back in 2015. State Senator Kevin Matthews really began the discussions of, we're 6 years away from the 100th anniversary of the worst incident of domestic terrorism, and no one knows anything about it. Not only that, we need to come around this, and what are things that we can do to commemorate this, and more than just acknowledging the 100th anniversary of this. That's when this began, and that's when this dialogue, this reaching out to communities, to nonprofit organizations, to corporations, to community citizens, to direct descendants and family members of the history, of the legacy. There were about 44, at the end, there were about 44 members of the Centennial Commission. 26 of the 44 were African Americans who either lived in North Tulsa or had a direct connection. Their great-great-grandmother, or great-aunt, or great-grandfather had some type of story where they owned a business or had property or had land. So there was a deep-rooted grounding of people that were sitting around the table saying, I have direct connection to this. And so as you get closer, it's, okay, what can we have one time in history to do this? Let's do more than just build a building. We can raise money to build a building. What will be the long sustaining impact, so we don't just have in 2022, hey, we did that last year, we're good. We sang Kumbaya and came together. No, we addressed the first thing we attacked was the educational component. This is not being taught in Oklahoma public schools. That's the first thing we did. Education Committee sat down with the Oklahoma State Department of Education and redesigned, took about 8 months, but completely redesigned what's being taught in Oklahoma public schools, so that they'll have the tools, they'll have the resources, and so it's more than just a paragraph in a book that this happened in this place called Greenwood and move on. It is a full curriculum now that schools have and can and be taught. And by the way, it is mandated now to be taught. As of in 2021, that actually was a mandate that went out. You have that, you have the economic development. How do we raise awareness of investment firms and banks re-evaluating how they invest in communities of color? How you approach that, how you invest in not just providing money, but understanding there's a process, there's a learning curve, there is a demand for African Americans to be on the forefront and the lead of these positions. And sometimes it's, if you allow for African Americans to be in the front, to be in the lead, to be making the decisions, sometimes corporations and nonprofits have to realize, you know what, maybe it's best for us to step back, provide the resources, provide the structure, and let African Americans lead in what decisions need to be made. A great example of that is the Zorro Family Foundation and the commemoration fund that they created, a $6 million fund that they put out to say, for health initiatives, for economic initiatives, for various initiatives, specifically for North Tulsa, here's $6 million. And they actually went out and recruited African American leaders. It's an all African American board, and they decide where to put their foundation's money to push initiatives in North Tulsa and African American communities in and around Greenwood. That was an example. Like, there needs to be more of that. That came out of some of the work of the commission, collaborating with communities. So yes, we built this building, we dedicated this to the survivors, to the history, to those who were impacted by this, so the world can come and never ever anyone be raised anywhere around the United States, and especially Oklahoma, and say, I never knew this, I didn't know that this happened. But where do we go with this now? We know it, we acknowledge it, we teach it, but what do we do with it now? I'd say that is probably the most powerful thing that came out of those commemorative activities is we're talking about where do we take the needle now? Where do we push forward into other areas, economic development for this community, and then be a model for communities around the country? How does a community deal with its racial past and do it in a way that you acknowledge it, you atone for it, but okay, let's make some differences moving forward and use Tulsa as a model, use Greenwood. They're still figuring it out. It's not perfect. We're still working through it, but we're moving forward and not just sitting here and saying we have a building. No, this building is just the starting point to keep the conversation and keep the moving forward. I'd say the message that you can give voice to is we no longer want to be only and solely remembered because of a massacre. People are attracted to this story because of that horrific moment. But the greater story is what we refer to as the indomitable human spirit. That black people created this incredible place. Hatred, white supremacy, the Ku Klux Klan, that found it to be a threat, destroyed it, tried to destroy it. But that indomitable human spirit, that mindset that says we shall not be moved. They could have, who would want to stay in a place where you're hated, where you're burned out? Who would want to stay here? They did. They didn't give up their land. They fought for their land, and they didn't wallow around in misery and sorrow, oh, woe is me. They had the wherewithal to say, this happened, but we're not going to let this determine our future fate. This is our land, and we're going to start rebuilding. Immediately, they rebuilt. Within 5 years, 80 to 90% of the business portion of Greenwood is rebuilt. It is an incredibly inspirational story for future generations, regardless of what comes against you, regardless of the hatred, regardless of what is taken from you. You have this as a model that you don't let that determine your future fate. So what? Yeah, they did it, but what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to wallow around and complain? Or are you going to pick yourself and your community back up and move forward? Now, obviously, we're not going to see something like that to that extent happen, but it is an inspiration. If they can get through that, everything you own, everything you have completely destroyed, but you have the wherewithal to rebuild it again, really, it's for us and future generations, we have no excuse. The opportunities that we have, the educational achievements that we have, yes, we still face racism. Yes, we still face prejudice in this country, in different communities around this world, but we have no excuse when you compare to what adversities they had to overcome and did it, compared to the little things that we have to deal with. We have no excuse to not achieve much more and greater. That's the voice that we need to give more to. The massacre, but more so the Black Wall Street mindset. The Black Wall Street mindset is, this is not a geographic location. This is a mindset that you can do anything that you put your mind and your heart to, but you got to work for it, you have to be dedicated to it, and you will pursue it without hesitation, without letting anything get in your way. The spirit of Black Wall Street is how you think and not where you live. Being in this position has, it's really affirmed. This did not begin 3 years ago for me. This didn't begin 5 years ago when I was the board chair for the Greenwood Cultural Center. This did not begin for me, 8, 9, 10 years ago when I opened and had businesses and restaurants right here on Greenwood. This didn't begin there. This began with my mother back when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, growing up in a rural town in Ohio, teaching me, you are a young Black boy growing up in a white-dominated world, and she taught me you don't have to despise or think yourself less than. You are just as good, if not better, than anyone else. And I'm going to teach you. Her focus was, I'm going to teach you how to be successful in this world, but I'm going to make sure you never forget from whence you've come. that you understand you are black, and to be proud of that, and to understand your history, to understand the tragedies that many black people have gone through with slavery and civil rights and the racial era that black citizens always seem to go through in this country. But don't let that make you bitter. Don't let that make you think America is a horrible place. There are some horrible actors in this history, but we can achieve things here like nowhere else around the world. So understand your American heritage, but understand there is a vibrant, strong black heritage that is beautiful, that is wonderful, that is powerful, and it will always, there will never come a day where it will not face resistance. How you handle that resistance is what makes you a man, and what makes you a woman of color, of how do I deal with the resistance. So that began when I was a young boy. And so then going to a historically black college, that reinforced. Not that other universities and institutions support them all, but for me, the experience that I got attending an HBCU, especially a boy growing up in a rural area where all that I saw was white students, and it helped me to recenter and remember who I was and my history and my traditions, and that formed me. So coming to Oklahoma, being in this position now, I'm immensely blessed. I know that as a person of faith, God has ordered my steps. People of faith understand what that means. But it did not begin here. I was shaped, I was formed, I was pushed, and all this position did was affirm what was already planted in me many, many years ago. When people come into this center, I want them to leave with an incredible sense of inspiration. I want different people take different things depending on their background. If you are a African American and you have direct connection to this history, you leave with a sense of awe because you realize how incredible these people were, and that same blood that pushed and inspired them runs through your veins, so it gives inspiration. If you're an African American that visits here and are not connected to this history, it gives that person a sense of an incredible achievement of, wow, look what black people were able to do. And I'm just now finding out about this because it makes you mad. How come nobody taught me this in school? You know, I may have gone down a different track if I'd have knew about a J.B. Stratford and an O.W. Gurley and what Oklahoma was for black people. How come nobody's ever told us that and taught us this? It gives you this determination. What else don't I know? And you want to leave and find out and research more. For white citizens, what I see mainly is an understanding of what it means for incredible portions of history to be hidden, and waking up one day and realize my opinions of this has to change. My opinions that this is about black folks getting money and reparations and getting written checks. There have been incredible moments that I have watched grown men, and I'll just say candidly, white men who were conservative in their beliefs and their politics. This is Oklahoma. I mean, let's just call it out. It is one of the most conservative, politically leaning places to live in the United States. But I have watched grown white adult men actually shed tears and say, this has changed me. This is not what I thought it was. There's so much that I wasn't told. I can't believe this has changed. There are people that have left here and written full letters to me on how it has changed them, and I wish I could tell more people about this. It does many different things, but those three groups I spell out because those are the responses that I've seen most verbalized after their experience of coming through here. The main thing that I'll leave with is kind of our North Star. It is the quote that is on the exterior of our north wall as you're facing the building, and it really has guided me. It's guided all this work, and it continues to guide us. And it's the words of James Baldwin: not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. That's what this work is about. Facing this and then learning from it and moving forward.